Hi everybody, my name is Dr. Pat Progar. I'm the Chief Clinical Officer here at Brett DiNovi Associates.
And I'm Dr. Frances Perrin. I am the Executive Clinical Director here at Brett DiNovi Associates.
And we're coming to you from our headquarters in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. Today, we're going to talk about the top 5 mistakes that new BCBAs make.
We sort of pulled these out of a hat in terms of what we think are some of the top 5. So the first one I want to talk about is jumping to make changes to a plan without doing any assessment. So going in and making a change to the behavior plan solely because a staff person or a family member or a teacher is upset or they're complaining.
And I've actually seen that happen, and one of the things that I find kind of interesting, a newer BC might actually call or text me and they'll apologize for bothering me, and they'll say, you know, like, this happened or that happened and this is what I did, and they made a change to a plan without doing an assessment, just based on a parent or a teacher complaining. And you know, that's not a problem that's unrecoverable from, you know, and it's something I'm sure you and I have done that too. You get caught up in the moment, you're trying to help somebody out.
Yep.
But really what should happen then, once you notice that that's occurred, go back, get approval, make sure you're talking to all members of the team, make sure it isn't just a kind of one-off issue, that type of thing. But it certainly does happen. Second mistake that new BCs often make is not seeking advice or mentorship from more experienced colleagues, especially when faced with a challenging case. And for me, this is kind of interesting, and I had 4 or 5 other PhD level behavior analysts on a unit of 18 kids. And I was kind of the new PhD on the block, but I always felt that I could go to any of them and ask for input. Sometimes they would give me input, right? I mean, we have a very collegial team. And I think more often than not today, a lot of newer BCs, they might be on home cases where they might feel somewhat isolated. Even in schools, they might feel somewhat isolated. You know, there is no bad question, right? There is no stupid question. And I would much rather have somebody reach out to me and ask for support or advice or whatever. And at some point, one of the things I've done is after, you know, if they've done it 2 or 3 times, I'll be like, I think you got this, all right? And go ahead, give it a go this time. Loop me in if you need to, but I think you're good. And kind of set them free.
Yeah, I've always told students that it's just really important to maintain any relationships you have with supervisors, because if you do end up in a situation where you're working more independently, you've got someone that you can call. You shouldn't ever be expected to make decisions independently if you're not comfortable.
Absolutely.
So, I agree. So number 3, relying solely on initial training and not staying updated with advancements in the field. Even though we have continuing education built into certification, and it will be tied to licensure also, that some people will take maybe the easy way out and, you know, attend talks or do webinars, and being willing to continue to learn as you advance in your career. If I was still doing assessment and intervention the way I was doing it when I first started, the kids that I'm providing services for today would not be where they are.
Absolutely.
So I think as the field grows, we get better at doing behavior analysis. We should all be making sure that we're taking that in so that we can provide better behavior analytic services. I think one other recommendation that I would make there is, if you are attending an in-person conference that has different tracks, go to at least one talk that you know nothing about.
Yeah, I love that. Number 4. Relying on a favorite strategy, such as token economies or extinction, without fully assessing its appropriateness for the individual. And this also could be tied into assessment. So kind of following up on what you were saying, you know, obviously the field's evolved over time, and what worked 20 years ago, 30 years ago, might still work, but we might have refinements of that. There might be other interventions that people could try. So again, nothing wrong with token economies or extinction. They're still very critical to our field, but you sometimes will kind of see somebody that, if you just looked at a plan, you could almost identify who that BC is based on what they're doing.
And I think that also gets you out of your comfort zone, right? Or you should not be necessarily in a comfort zone. You should always walk into a new case, a new student, a new learner, and try not to compare them to somebody that you've worked with previously, but really look at what does this individual need and what can I put into place that's going to get them better in the future. All right, number 5, creating overly complex behavior plans that are difficult for others to understand or implement. I think the bottom line here is if the plan is complex, it's not going to be run with integrity, and therefore it's not going to work anyway. And so I think there's that component analysis, right? What components do we really need to get the behavior change that we want? There's also some social validity in there, right? Staff, parents, other caregivers are not going to run the plan if it's complex or they don't see it working. So start small. What is the bare minimum that we need to do to get this individual behavior to either increase or decrease depending on what it is?
People aren't going to be able to follow that complicated plan. I mean, life is messy out there, right? Whether you're in a classroom or in a home, there might be other siblings there or whatever. So, try to avoid that. I mean, obviously, some of the kids we work with, they might be more complex because we deal with, really challenging behavior. But yeah, critical point.
Or even if you need to put something more complex in initially, you've got to be able to fade it, right? So if you're starting with a 5-minute DRO, right? You cannot maintain a 5-minute DRO in a classroom setting. It's just not possible, right? And have that staff person, if they have their own staff person, doing all the academic programming that needs to happen too. So. And
we just went a little crazy. We're like, what's kind of a goofy mistake, right? These we felt were all kind of major ones. A goofy mistake, and hopefully you haven't come across this, but this is where somebody might accidentally reinforce inappropriate behavior of the client during a session. An example might be having people laugh when they do something inappropriate. And sometimes the BCBA may recognize that right away. Other times it might take a while. And one example that comes to mind, and it didn't happen here, but it was a person I worked with somewhere else. They came back. We had a new patient arrive, and I said, "How'd it go?" And she's like, "Oh, great." And she's like, "We really had a great time." And I was like, "Oh, great." I'm thinking they're pairing everything. And I said, "What was so great about it?" And she's like, "Well, he burped really loudly," and we all laughed. And then he started burping more, and he was almost nonstop burping by the time I left, and we just think that's hilarious. And I guess the look on my face, she must have been, she's like, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. And I said, probably not. I said, my guess is if you just shape that up one day, if we move that to extinction, that could work. But I said that's not appropriate for a group home type setting.
So those are our mistakes. We want to thank you for watching this video today. If you liked it, please click that like button, and you can always drop a comment about other videos you'd like to see in the future. Thanks.